Welcome to Connecting Communities. I'm your host, Nancy Bacci. With me today is Gay Koty, school nurse leader from the Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you for coming on, Gay.
Good morning, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. I'm excited to learn more about the valuable services that our nurses provide. I wanted to start first. People may not be aware, as of July 1, the Health Department has become the Department of Health and Human Services, with the addition of the Human Services Department, also bringing the ADA component under that as well. And there are so many different things offered by this department that I had to print out a list, so people really are aware of how many services we have. So under the Health and Human Services Department, we have the Emergency Preparedness Information, the Office of Commissions, which includes the work of the Human Rights Commission, the Multicultural Affairs Commission, the Women's Commission, the LGBTQ liaison position, as I said, the ADA person, Shape Up Somerville, the Office of Prevention, which encompasses Somerville Cares About Prevention, the Trauma Response Network, tobacco control, we have public health nursing, and school nursing. So a lot of things contained within one department, and it is a great amount of staff who do a wonderful job. I wanted to briefly find out, you've been doing this work for quite a while. I understand it's a passion with you. What drew you into nursing?
Oh gosh. I think that originally it was, I had family members with health concerns and I wanted to know more. And people in my family that have experienced the healthcare system and always felt that the nurse played a huge role in their recovery and their education about the healthcare system, and always was played a supportive role. So I had a great respect for nursing before I even became a nurse. So I guess that's it. I've been a nurse now for over 25 years.
Wow.
And I've been in the health department for over 22 years. I started as a school nurse back in 1992. And have enjoyed that role immensely. I've been in many different schools throughout the system, and so I have a great working knowledge of a lot of the staff, people in the school department, as well as my own nursing staff. I'd like to also take this opportunity to, let the community members know that they have a great, dedicated, professional group of nursing staff within the school system. They come under the Board of Health, but they are placed in the school department, and they're out there every day taking care of the children of our community as if they were their own.
See, I'm very glad that you started off with that, acknowledging the staff, because the work they do is so critical, and it's interesting how you mentioned what kind of drew you into the position yourself was the relationship with nursing and understanding that they're there. They serve as a touchstone. Clearly, they're competent medical staff, but I think people sometimes underestimate the importance of having that kind of one-on-one relationship with someone. And, as we know, doctors do an amazing job, but it seems sometimes that the nurses have the opportunity to spend more time also with the family members as well as the patient, but really kind of learning some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that maybe you don't put on a chart necessarily, but really is critical to ensuring an overall healthy person.
Well, this is true, Nancy, and to that comment, my school nurses not only collaborate with the doctors and medical team that are working with the student, but they also educate the family. They reinforce what the family's already been taught by the doctor's office and the professionals in their primary care setting, but they reinforce it, and they are in touch with those primary care people to be sure that they also follow up with the families and provide them with the services that they need in order to provide their kids with the optimal health care benefits.
One thing I found very interesting in your opening remarks is the fact that you had started as a school nurse, had the opportunity to be in different schools, work with different populations, and really kind of see how the climate has changed in that time. From the 90s to now, the changes in healthcare reform, insurance requirements, just all of these sort of things. But I'm really interested in, so when you were in schools working with these young people and what you hear from your nurses now, does it still seem to have a lot of similarities? I know you and I had talked about, the nurse's office is a safe space. So people really need to be aware of that. And our young people have a lot of moving parts in their lives, and you really want them to know there's this particular spot carved out where you can go, and if there's other things going on in your life, you don't have to put on a front. It is a safe space. The nurse is there for your service, whatever service you're looking for, but also to really provide a listening ear, and I imagine a friendly face that is often needed.
Absolutely, and that's what's critical to the nurses being part of the health department. They do not answer to the school department dictates. Although they are supportive of all of the goals and objectives of the school department, they are an independent practitioner. They're there for the child. They're there as an advocate for the child, and you know, there isn't anything that the school nurse can't do to help. And you know, over the years, kids have come to the school nurse with pretty heavy loads that they carry, and the school nurses has been able to direct them to professionals that can help them solve these issues. The nurse is often a person that finds out if there is strife in the family. You know, children show up in the health room with somatic symptoms, and it's up to the nurse to tease out exactly what's going on. And it's often not the bellyache, you know, or that they haven't had breakfast, but sometimes it is the breakfast thing too. And it's, you know, families that are being challenged in many different ways that aren't able to provide their kids with a healthy breakfast before they leave home, or, you know, oftentimes parents need to get out of the house and get to work earlier than the kids do for school, and they're at young ages really responsible for getting themselves out, and they don't often do it on time, and they don't often get their breakfast in beforehand, and you know, many times they get to school late and aren't able. We do provide breakfast for children. They get to school late, they don't get a breakfast. So they go to the nurse's office to get that food, and the nurse is responsible for getting them back in a timely fashion and to support and respect the reason that the child's there in the first place, for education. So it's a multifaceted job, which is really challenging sometimes, but really rewarding at the same time. And we've had nurses truly save lives. We've had children who have had anaphylaxis in school that were not diagnosed prior, you know, so we are prepared for those situations. We have really taken on a safety role in the school department and in the city. The nurses and the school department are really advocating to have more and more people within the school setting take the training regarding education around anaphylaxis, like I say, which is a life-threatening reaction to an allergen. And it's really important to recognize the symptoms. It's, staff is not obligated to diagnose, but at least if they're educated, they can get the professional help. Get the nurse to come and evaluate and take care of the child. Children that do have diagnoses, the staff can be trained so that when they go on a field trip, when they're away from the school setting, when there isn't a nurse around, that they are prepared. And preparation is, you know, the key. Education is the key. That's the best we can do, is to make sure that most people are trained. Even if the teacher doesn't have a child with anaphylaxis or a life-threatening allergy in their classroom, to be trained this year and not have a child, that's great. You may have 3 next year, and we'll do the training again.
Proactive, right? It's always best,
just like CPR. You know, we have this year, we're still in the process of incorporating all the AEDs that are in the system between the school department and the city. I have worked to develop an AED oversight, and so now we're going to have medical direction, medical policies and procedures in line with the American Heart Association, and hopefully we will have people that really want to. We can't mandate people in the system to get trained, but hopefully we'll have people that'll want to be trained, you know, just to be safe, you know, and to provide a safer community for all of us.
So you've covered so many interesting topics, and I really think it's important, again, for people to understand the nurses aren't seeing, perhaps, like, you know, when we were younger and you went to the nurse and you said, you know, you fell on the playground, or, you know, this happened or that happened. And those everyday things, of course, still happen. But I think as a community, the awareness that young people in our community are taking on sometimes parentified roles. You know, if you're the older sibling, like you said, and the realities are parents have to work, people have demands on their time. You know, everybody tries to do the absolute best they can, but there's a lot of burden on a lot of us within this community.
Absolutely.
And having some of our young people, as you said, responsible to get themselves out the door, helping their younger siblings get ready, and, you know, when it's get ready and get out the door, stop and make toast, you know what I mean? Something has to give. You have to make certain, you know, you're ready to walk out. And I think the nurses having the awareness of all of these new challenges and the sensitivity really that it takes to deal with a lot of these issues. Because, you know, I'm certain you don't come in and say, okay, so, you know, I have a stomach ache, and, you know, the next thing out of your mouth isn't because I didn't eat, or, you know, the nurses really have to take the time to develop that rapport with students. And I think seeing it identified as a safe space, I think encourages young people to feel more comfortable and to be able to develop that rapport and realize that being open about your particular situation, you're not going to be stigmatized, you're not going to be ridiculed. If anything, you're going to be receiving additional supports and resources, and now you have someone who knows to check in with you on a regular basis.
Absolutely, and that's what makes the job so rich. That's what you develop through these different situations, life situations. You're contacting family, you're finding out, you're teasing out what the problem really is with the child. That's where the richness comes from. And it really does, I mean, it may be cliche, but it really does take a village, you know, and the nurses are a really important part of that village. You know, school principals and vice principals are also supportive, as well as the collective team they have in the individual schools, where they, you know, they are sensitive to families that are having strife, and they try very much to support families in whatever way they can.
Now, we know through the Office of Prevention and Somerville Cares About Prevention, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is administered. 1 year it's the high school, the next year it's the middle school, and then back to the high school, so we're able to track trends. Now, one of the things that's always very interesting is when they ask the young people who take the anonymous survey, so we have all faith and belief that the answers are true because it's anonymous. They ask young people about trusted adults in their lives, and one of the examples, of course, is a nurse. And it's nice to see when people are like, I have a teacher, I have a parent, I have the nurse, I have a counselor, I have someone, so it's nice to have a laundry list of this. So you may have a very trusting relationship with your parents, but if they're not available at the moment, it's nice to know you can go to your teacher or your nurse or, other people within your community to really make certain that you're being heard. Other interesting results from that, as we know, interesting and somewhat sad, of course, is, we see an increase sometimes in mental health concerns as well as suicidal ideation at younger ages. So again, I think really knowing that there's the possibility of deepening this relationship, I think must provide a level of comfort to a lot of students, knowing, if you do feel you're struggling, we all struggle with different things in our lives, knowing you have a place to go to talk about this, and it doesn't become, you're not all of a sudden the kid over there who, thinks he's depressed, or you're not the girl over there who, is constantly complaining about this. It just really adds another layer, I think, to the safety net that all of us need in this community.
Well, that being said, Nancy, it's so true that the information that we gather from those two surveys is huge. It allows us the ability to see what's going on, the bullying policy, those kinds of issues came from that kind of information. Mental health issues today are huge. They are hugely on the rise. And just as our Board of Health is so diverse, the school nurse has those resources available to them. Patty Contente, who is our Trauma Response Network social worker, is a huge help to us, and in fact is currently, I have scheduled Patty to do some mental health first aid training with our school nurses. Our nurses are educated around mental health issues just in nursing school anyway, but this is an opportunity for them to really hone in on their skills around mental health assessment and to provide kids with the support that they need in a crisis. We have a terrific health room at the high school. We have 3 nurses at the high school. They have several times this past year sent children out with mental health issues. But in order to support our populations as well, we have a nurse that speaks one nurse for each of our primary languages. We have a Spanish-speaking nurse, a Portuguese-speaking nurse, and a Haitian Creole-speaking nurse, which, I am so lucky to have been able to hire people with those kinds of skills that will really support and speak to the respect that we have for our community and our kids. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey is very telling in the kinds of needs our community needs today. And I think we're very similar to a lot of communities in the Boston area. We're not much different from them, but it really gives us a chance to address some of these issues.
And like you said, we're able to craft programming and responses to what you see. And I think the most important part of the data is when you're able to track the trends. You know, if you're seeing a particular issue that's arising in 8th grade students, and then when they take the survey next year as a high school student, you're able to say, all right, so maybe this was just kind of a transition issue, or did it carry over into high school, and all of these other things. One of the comments that you made I was really impressed by, which is the language capacity. As we know, the reason we live and work here is this is an amazing place, and what makes it so amazing is the diversity of our population.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine, you know, so you see some of these other cities and towns and the percentages breakdown, and I'm always like, that must be kind of boring to live somewhere where everybody is just like you. I feel, you know, it denies you the opportunity to learn new things. Or one of my favorite things is a neighbor of mine is of Haitian background. In her cooking, my youngest daughter would eat it out of house and home if she could, and I've tried to replicate it with no success. but it's not, you know, she's very kind and always shares the recipes, and then finally she was like, I could just make it and bring it to your home. I was like, that also could be a better idea, but you know, it's having the chance to experience all of that. And when we talk about things that are sensitive issues, you know, someone's health. Now think as a parent yourself, the protectiveness that surrounds your child for the rest of all of our lives. Now, knowing that they're in school and discussing things, whatever the issues may be, there are different cultural components to that. You know, language barriers cannot be underestimated in terms of people feeling at ease and having a conversation. We all know navigating a system is tricky. For those of us who English is our first language and are familiar with systems, it still is a struggle sometimes to get from A to B. Now, adding in the different components or potential barriers of language, cultural components, now having the ability to come and speak with someone in your native language, they understand your reservations or the traditions or all of these other things that come into play. Now, how does that not make for such a healthier child?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how, you know, how welcoming and accepting that is when you respect someone enough to be able to provide them the information in their language. The school department has long been that sensitive, and you know, luckily I've been in this position long enough that I've been able to hire some people, and those kinds of skills have been foremost in my mind and the director's mind when we look at resumes and people that we are considering as school nurses. I have another school nurse who's not American born. She comes from Africa, and it's just great to have that cultural diversity within our system, within our small group of nurses. We have a population right now of 15 nurses. I have 4 per diem staff nurses that work for me as well, but a couple of them are also, this is a second job for them. They work in a hospital setting, so they're not always available. But the expertise that they bring to me, one of them is an ICU, neuro ICU nurse.
Wow. Who,
you know, was working for me one day at the high school when a child took a seizure.
Wow.
You know, and she was able to assess and document and communicate with that child's doctor in a way even more beyond our need, you know, our capabilities. But you know, she is a great resource for us. You know, she's always available for us. So we have, you know, really, school nursing is a challenging, wonderful job. I have been at different functions that, like, Patty Contente has run and Koty when they're giving out the data that the school risk behavior survey. So I've gone to attend those meetings, and you know, kids that were seniors now that are working with them, I had when they were little kids, and they were like, oh, Mrs. Koty, and it's like, oh my gosh, like how, like so wonderful. Like I never thought that when I was a younger person about, you know, kids growing up and enjoying watching not only my own children, but children from the community grow up and succeed and realize their dreams. But it really is a rewarding experience.
And again, it takes a lot of people to make a healthy community with healthy residents in it.
Absolutely.
One of the areas you touched upon was training. You had mentioned the mental health first aid training that you're going to have Patty Contente provide. Now, I've taken that training, and it's so informative and so necessary, I feel, and especially on, again, topics that people aren't necessarily comfortable speaking with. I mean, I know people in the healthcare profession clearly have more exposure and a different level of comfort with it, but it's an amazing training to realize, like, you know, asking direct questions and how to prepare yourself for the responses you can hear, you know? I mean, if you're asking someone about mental health concerns they might have, or, you know, if a family member is presenting as depressed, or have they ever considered suicide as an option? I mean, you have to be ready to hear, yes, I have, you know, and know that the next step is to go in this direction and know resources at the ready. And I think between your staff, which I must say, you clearly show great pride in your staff, and it is very nice to see. I've had a lot of guests on over these years, and clearly you have a love for your job, and it is reflected in the pride you display in your staff as well. So that is very nice to see.
Thank you.
But it is a great relationship, though, between the health department, the school department, you know, the support of Mayor Curtatoni's administration, to really understand that for a lot of our young people, school is where the majority of your time is spent.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I think of that when my girls were younger. Like, I would miss them, and it's like it's such a big part of the day that they would be gone for. But as you said, students getting there in time to participate in the breakfast program. You're there throughout the day. Some children go right to practice for sports or the various clubs or tutoring. So the potential is to be there for a long period, a long period of time over the course of a day. So it's nice to know that within that block of time, there are always these opportunities to be like, you know, I have a question, or I'm concerned. And the school, the high school particularly, has the mediation program, which works to resolve conflicts between students as well. So there are so many different great resources available that I feel sometimes you just want to like take an ad out in the paper for the community, because I think of young people navigating dating relationships or transition from friendship into dating relationships.
Or struggling with sexual orientation.
Right. Exactly. So you have the different levels of all of those components, and thankfully we live in a community where there really is no bias towards people's relationships, which is a wonderful thing to see. But if you're a young person questioning any of those things, you need someone to talk to who maybe isn't your aunt and, you know, already has their own view of it. Are not your friends who's your best friend today, but then you have a fight and now they know this kind of privileged information about you. So
absolutely,
I think it's so important to really emphasize.
And the thing about the health department is that we are able to tap into the resources available to us. The LGBTQ Commission has been a resource for us as well. When a family is moved into the community and they have a child who is questioning, they've contacted me and said, you know, what can you do and how can we, you know, make this a smooth transition? How can you support my child through this? And I can go to the commission and talk with them about, you know, resources and, you know, how we can. And it sounds like a simple thing, like a few years back, and I don't know, the school department contacted me and they couldn't really figure out, like, how do we want to respect this child? So, you know, the school nurse's bathroom is available to anybody.
Gender neutral.
Gender neutral, because they don't feel safe. The bathroom is a very unsafe place for a child who is questioning or is openly gay. So it's, I think we're moving towards that. I think we have a lot more work to do in that area, but I definitely see hope, and I do see that. And we were really happy and proud to be able to solve, you know, at least a piece of the solution for the school department. So.
Well, that's one of the things that you've mentioned several times throughout this as well, is the relationships. So by having this position, and I think also by being a former school nurse yourself, I think it kind of gives you like a bird's eye view, because you understand what it's like to work in the schools themselves and deal with the students and the staff and the parents and the community, but then also to now become the school nurse leader. So I imagine it's easier for your staff to be able to come to you because they know at one point you were sitting where they were sitting. You know,
I hope so.
Right, but to understand the time to develop the relationships, like you said, there's no hesitation on the part of a school department staff to pick up the phone and call you and say, this is what we're looking at. How can you make this easier for us? Who do you know?
It happened to me this morning.
Right, who's the next contact? But that's the whole, you know, point of it, is it really comes down to having the connections within a community, and that takes time to develop. So
absolutely,
you know, I applaud the nurses in the schools. They provide a very valuable resource, and again, taking the time to learn about the students. And again, well, you have a lot of students and they come with, you know, all their families and all of the other stuff and the input from staff, and really finding a way to kind of manage that and work just towards the overall health of a child. It's an amazing journey. And I think you've mentioned, you know, the challenges, but the reward of it. And it seems that this is definitely one of those careers that I imagine that balance must just move up and down on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Because you have the chance to have such an impact. And I don't think that can be underemphasized.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've, you know, we've supported families going through, you know, really traumatic situations, you know, parents getting sick, parents, you know, passing away, and then supporting kids through that trauma, or parents that have even, you know, we've had parents who have been diagnosed with cancer who have, you know, I've watched PTAs support families, you know, taking parent to treatments, you know, and really just giving you such a feeling of community and caring and warmth that, you know, that cities don't often get credit for.
Right. Well, that was really my hope in asking you to come on today, was just, again, it's a profession I have the utmost respect for, and I really, anytime we have the opportunity to highlight the wonderful work they do and let people know the amazing resource within our community, happy to do so. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing some of the information. I feel like we could talk for probably 3 more hours about everything that happens.
Absolutely.
I would suggest if people need more information, clearly they can reach out to you, but the city's website is really a good source of information. If they go under, you know, the Health and Human Services Department, it really has a nice breakdown of all of the programs that are available, as well as the contact people for all of them. So again, thank you so much for taking your time out of the day today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy, for focusing on school nursing.
You're very welcome. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching. I appreciate the contributions of the production crew, Joe Constantine, Steve DiCarlo, and George Wood. I'll see you next month.